Welcome back. This is part 2 of the bottom end rebuild. Part 2 of the video, part 3 on the website. This model is a 2001 CR250. Next thing we're going to be doing is splitting the case to remove the crank. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is put the puller on the crank, and first thing you want to do is make sure this has got enough room for this to slide over the crank and sit flush on the case. Then install the bolts. You want to make sure you have enough threads going into the case so it doesn't strip it out. You don't need to get it too tight, but just make sure it's all the way down and against the case flush. Once you get all the bolts tightened down, you just want to tighten this bolt to pull the case away from the crank. Okay, there we go. Finally it's broke loose. Now let's remove the puller and remove the case to make sure there's nothing hanging up. Now we want to try to remove the transmission. Try to keep it as much in one piece as possible so that it goes together easier. Now what you want to do is move to the other side and put the puller on the other side to actually push the crank the rest of the way out. Next we're going to install the bearing into the case. What I've done is I've had the bearing in the freezer for a few hours. I'm just going to heat this up. Now that the case is heated and the bearing's cooled down, the bearing should just drop in. Sometimes you have to tap it a little bit, but it should go right in. Next we're going to install the crank. What you do now is put this through the bearing. Thread on the coupler to the shaft. Then you thread the puller installer onto the threaded end of the coupler. Once that's threaded on, just put a couple pieces of angle across this, give it something to pull against, and start to tighten this down to pull it through. Now just tighten this down, pulling the crank into the bearing. Now you come to the other side and put the gasket and the transmission in, and then use the other coupler on this side to pull the other case onto the crank. And then just install everything on the other side in reverse order the way it came apart.